Farcaster 101 is an educational series brought to you by GM Farcaster in partnership with Snickerdoodle, building off of their State of Farcaster report, which you can access at Snickerdoodle.com. This 12-part series introduces all aspects of the Farcaster ecosystem and helps you get started building your social graph and brand on Farcaster. GM Farcaster, and welcome back to Farcaster 101. This is Module 10, and we're diving into some content creation best practices. So we are going to dive right in to some of these topics. Content creation best practices. We're going to be talking about some casting tools that might be helpful in getting started. Talking about some content stars and what they've done so that you can learn from their best practices, and also diving into brands on Farcaster and sort of the best approach for brands. And so just a few reminders. Adrienne, tell us a little bit about casts in general and the different types of casts that folks might see, just as a reminder.
Yeah, so this is a little recap of our previous module. Think of casts like you would a tweet on Twitter, a post on any social media, primarily text-based, but you can add photos, you can add video, there are frames you can add. We talked a lot about how the algorithm on Farcaster will not penalize you based on your content. So you can link to external sites, and just think of cast as post or tweet.
Exactly. And utilize frames, especially when you're getting started, because this will help you get rolling. We also have some interesting cast creation and distribution tools that are both inside and outside of Warpcast. Again, Warpcast is the primary client that has been developed by the Farcaster team. But because this is a decentralized protocol, there are a number of different clients and tools that are outside of that. And the first one that's sort of been deemed as for power users is Supercast.xyz. This is a paid client, but it does allow for things like scheduling of casts, boosts of casts, different types of approaches. And I'm going to just touch on boosting really quick because there's 3 different types of boosting that you can do right now. I think there might even be more that I'm not thinking of. But one is via Supercast, which you can request a boost on there and then send that to the direct casts of other folks who can choose whether or not to boost that cast, in other words, to recast it. Then Perks has something very similar that they will do as well, boosting through DMs. And then the Warpcast team may also, at their discretion, choose to boost different accounts. Usually these are newer accounts that are producing good content, but maybe aren't getting engagement yet just because they're a little newer or unknown or just haven't reached the right audience. So they might give a boost just to allow for that opportunity. And Adrienne, can you talk about some of the other cross-posting to different social types of apps?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways, I think, if you're a brand and you want to kind of manage content across different apps. There's one called Answer. It's answer.social that lets you, I think, post through Farcaster Lens and Twitter. There's one popular one called Yup, which is also for cross-posting. Prof, I don't know if you have any personal experience with these. I've not been doing cross-posting because I like to customize my content for the different platforms I'm on.
I was just going to ask you about that. I was just going to say, but should you, is the question. So talk a little bit about why you may not want to do cross-posting.
No shade to people who do. I think plenty of people are just, I think do whatever works for you. But I know for me personally, I have different audiences, different networks on different social media networks. So I tend to tailor and cater what I'm posting about to the platform. So
yeah, I agree. I think that especially if you're used to posting on Twitter, you might find that a different approach to Farcaster might be helpful. So just think about it before you use cross-posting. For some things, it might be perfectly fine, especially as a brand account. You're doing announcements, things like that. Save yourself some time. But there may be other moments where you want to customize a little more. So just be a bit careful about that. And then lastly, utilizing a shared account to cast. This is fairly new meta. Super Anon is one example of this. So if you are a Supercast user, you can choose to post your cast as Super Anon. And there are some other opportunities to do something similar. So look for those as well. But that's sort of a down the line kind of a thing, not something to start with.
Yeah, and I think that you can use Farcaster and never use any of these power user tools. You don't need
Yep.
them out of the box. They exist because Farcaster is a little bit new and emerging. A lot of these tools themselves are also new. So they're functional, they work. A lot of times also you're able to communicate with the founders and builders of all these tools on Farcaster and give feedback. So that's the good side of having access to tools, and the bad side is the tools are just as new as well. So they're, I think, not as polished as some of the other kind of marketing tools you might be used to that have not yet integrated with Farcaster. But definitely I'd encourage you to check these out.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that we'll find as things develop, other tools will be developed specifically for Farcaster, or Farcaster will be integrated with traditional social media marketing tools. Also, something to think about here is cast actions or composer actions. So this is a way to create a cast that you're using existing apps that are built in to the cast interface to be able to cast some content. And I'm going to show you a video of creating a cast using the composer action, clicking on that little four square a little emoji on there, and it brings up this particular modal that you can look through. I selected Nook. Nook allows you to do reviews of different things. So that can be movies, it can be books, it can be a number of different things. And so for this, I'm just doing an example of a review of Top Gun. And then I can add additional information to the cast that I just want to live in the cast, not necessarily in the review. But this creates a really cool frame that allows the viewers to see what your information was that you're adding to this in terms of what was it about the movie you liked, et cetera. But then it also has a few different links in the frame itself to allow you to actually access the outside content. In other words, the movie itself, which is pretty cool. So there's a whole bunch of different types of composer actions. So you can also launch a poll using Ponder. You can launch a bounty using Bountycaster. And there's a whole list that you'll see in the beginning of that video that was showing you like all the different options that are in there. So explore, find things that are interesting to you. It's a nice little shortcut, especially when you're getting started, to be able to just start casting some content and making it a little bit easy on yourself. Okay, moving on. So we kind of dove into this last time and talked about some of the top creators on Warpcast and the Dune dashboards that are available. And these links will be available to you within the notes on Paragraph and in the show notes on all of our videos as well. And I'd highly recommend exploring the Dune dashboards, taking a look at some of the top creators, not only to follow them and interact with them, but also just to see what is it they're doing. What is it that their content is sort of driving engagement? What is it about it that makes it good? And sort of take some lessons from those top creators. Another reminder about content rewards. There are a few different ways that content creators do get rewards on Warpcast and Farcaster. So one is directly from the Merkle team. They're doing an experiment through the end of the year, doing $5 USDC daily reward for the top 100. And this is based on a particular algorithm that measures engagement. There's also tipping from individual users using DGen or Paybot or Floaties. There's a whole bunch of different methods to do that. And you're also earning, you may be earning some rewards from Moxie, which is built right into Farcaster. And that is happening through a number of different metrics that it's measuring based on who is interacting with your content. So lots of different ways to earn rewards for good content. And there's another Dune dashboard that shows you the Warpcast rewards recipients. And this is another great place to sort of look at and see what folks are doing in terms of content and what makes it good. And again, we've mentioned this before, the VIP, influencer, and star levels sort of drive the bulk of the engagement on Farcaster. And there's plenty of room to get into those spaces. It's still a relatively small ecosystem. So if you have a particular niche or expertise, you are particularly situated to do very well on Farcaster. And let's talk a little more about that. Adrian, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about sharing your niche and why that is a really good strategy.
Yeah, I think it's a great strategy almost anywhere. So at Farcaster, people are crypto native. We talked a lot about Farcasters being builders and founders and what they have in common. But it's not an echo chamber. And I think people are very interested in learning about other people's expertise and really looking for interesting content. So one of the most successful strategies we found for new people is when people come into the network and start sharing and posting and casting about their niche. And we have 3 examples that we wanted to highlight. So the first one is Naomi. Her handle on Farcaster is AfroChicks. She is a British triple jump world champion, and she is documenting her journey on chain. And she came in, she started posting a lot of videos, and she very quickly grew to 19,000 followers. She was able to monetize directly from feed using Hypersub and with NFT mints. And she just really dove in and created a community, I think, early on. She's been incredible to kind of watch her journey. Another account we like to talk about is Murtaza, who is a independent journalist. He was working at The Intercept for a while. I don't think he's now, but he has, I think he got his claim to fame during Arab Spring as an independent journalist. And he came in also and just started talking about global news. And we didn't really have that niche in Farcaster. No one was doing it. And he immediately developed it and grew a large following. I think now he's got 24,000 followers. And he just kind of embraced it and came in, and we love to highlight him. And then most recently, there's a woman, Kate Cornish, who's a classical musician, came in and just started posting about her journey and her artistry and her music, and she's got over 2,500 followers. So these are just 3 people that are not necessarily crypto forward, right? Like they have their niches, but they've all come in and kind of found their way by leaning into their expertise.
Yeah. And also, at least for Naomi and Murtaza, they also have a really great sense of humor. So they are also able to blend that into what they're sharing, and that often helps as well. And then we have brands and interns. And I love this little cast here from Dan. I hate brand accounts on Twitter, but the brand account interns on Farcaster are awesome because they are different. They're not dull. They bring personality to their brands. It makes a huge difference than just seeing your normal sort of information that is just shared by a brand account. And some of the things they've, I think, achieved by with this approach also is really connecting with the community. So what these particular brand interns all have in common is They spent time on the platform, understood it, and decided to like dive in and be a part of the community, not just sort of throw their announcements out. And it's made a huge difference. So we have here highlighted Polymarket, Magic Eden, which is me on base, Shibuya, and the new Clanker intern, which is one of our bots, which we'll talk about in a moment. And they all, like I said, really similar to what we're talking about with Naomi and Murtaza, they also lean into humor. And I think that is what drives a lot of their engagement. And Adrian, can you talk a little bit more about the interns and their approach and their strategy?
Sure. And I was just going to just almost reiterate one of the things you were saying, though, is the interns, as even though they're brand interns, their strategy is no different than what any person who comes into Farcaster just as a regular user. So all the advice we've been giving you with these modules about treat Farcaster as a social network, not social media, applies to the brand accounts.
Absolutely.
Try to create community, create conversation, reply. I mean, these interns are doing that. They did that first before. They're not just kind of using Farcaster as a platform to scream all their brand updates. So we call them interns. They may or may not actually be interns. Some of them we know are. But it's a play. There's a concept in Web3 social media marketing, and maybe just kind of newer social media marketing called the intern concept. And it's the idea where the brand is giving control of their brand account to maybe a little bit of a reckless, chaotic, maybe rogue, yet endearing intern. And I think the reason it works well is because it can be funny at times, but it's really meant to create more of an authentic connection with brands. I think and I think in Web3 in particular, it really aligns with our ethos of experimentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Like brands don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah, and I think these 4 points that you've put together really highlight that. If you, I'll talk about a couple and then I'll turn it back to you.
Sure.
We talked about controlled chaos is one part of it. That whole we're giving it over to this intern and we don't know what they're going to do. Look out kind of feel, but it creates this very fun and humorous environment. So the intern went rogue or accidentally leaked alpha, in which we know it wasn't an accident at all. The humor and relatability persona makes the brand approachable, part of the community, self-deprecating jokes, or even, a shtick, if you will. The Polymarket intern had its bucket hat. And that was part of the shtick where it was sharing memes with the bucket hat on different memes. And that became part of the persona. So that was they've kind of done a little bit less lately, but that was something early on that they were really leaning into. And I think that added some just a lot of fun. Me on Base shares a lot of GIFs with Emmy, which is the character from Magic Eden. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And I'll let you hit the second two there.
Yeah. So one being community engagement, and this is kind of what I just hit upon a few minutes ago, just about the intern is there to interact and and communicate with the audience, or with the followers and other people on Farcaster. It's casual, it's conversational. I I have interacted with some of these brand accounts or the interns, and it's funny because sometimes they'll say, it's like they're on your side, and then they'll say something like, "I don't know, I need to go ask." If you ask a question about a brand, like they lean into the intern role as if they don't have authority to actually kind of speak on behalf of the brand. But it does feel like you're speaking to a human, not behind like a top down kind of controlled brand. And then there's the subversive brand strategy. So just the idea in itself of like it's not this top down controlled environment, and because you're as a brand you're giving control of your social media strategy to kind of the unhinged intern, it makes it feel more human and fallible in a way that makes it authentic.
And it's just a lot of fun. And it creates very good content. We talked a little bit about some of these already, but why they work well in Web3 is the decentralized nature, the idea that there's a lot of early adopters. So we tend to be a little more tech savvy, love irony and meta humor. Memes work so well in the Web3 environment, and community driven, which we talked a lot about already. And I think you have a really good point here that you had put in here, Adrian, being careful, because when it's executed well, it's great, reflects authenticity, creates great community bonding, but it needs to be a careful balance for sure, so that it doesn't turn too tone deaf or create any actual damage, because you do have to be careful there. What else do you want to add to that?
I wish I could tell you exactly, these are the rules to follow to make the intern work,
Yeah.
and these are not. And honestly, the fact that we can't give you those rules is why the intern works so well. Because when it hits really well, because it actually does feel real and human. Um, so yeah, I think how exactly to do the intern well and how not to screw it up, maybe is a separate module we can cover sometime.
Yeah.
Um,
Be
but
some separate advice. I think
but
it's
go
tough. I
study the
think it's
interns. Study
study
the
the
interns on
interns.
Farcaster. You know,
Yes.
if you want to do the intern route, study Me on Base,
Yep.
study Polymarket,
Yep.
study SwampNet,
SwampNet.
study,
Yep.
yeah, there's some good
Shibuya. Yep.
ones. Hmm.
Yeah, they're and again, humor is probably the biggest key here. I think more than anything is not taking yourself too seriously. And that's what really drives engagement. The other thing is being the reply guys, like really getting into those replies. And we've mentioned this a couple times before. That's where you really can connect with folks, and that's how they're going to see you. It's hard to be seen on the timeline when you're new. So diving into the replies is where you can start to make those connections. And that brings us to some bots as content creators. This is a fairly new phenomenon. We've had bots, all along, but mostly they were informative, useful. They were tools. So they might be just sort of announcing things or letting you know. For example, a lot of the DAOs have bots that let you know when a new proposal is up or something along those lines. But the new meta is the AI bots that are actually interacting with you as and creating their own content. So sometimes via prompt and via specific directions. For example, the MFR GPT will give a summary every day of what's happening on Farcaster. So that's something that it's programmed to do. But you can also tag it and ask it questions as well. Ask Gina is super informational. So if you have a question about Farcaster or anything, actually, I think anything related to crypto, but also may even have some wider knowledge there, you can tag Ask Gina and ask her a question. There is some, for that one, you may have to sign up in order to use it, but sometimes she will answer some basic questions. And then there's Ethernet, and Ethernet is a very thoughtful AI bot that is it will give you lots of philosophical thinking and sometimes it will cast things on its own. If you tag it and ask it a question, it will also interact with you, and there have been some very extensive conversations that have happened with Ethernet regarding all kinds of different topics all over the place. So go check out Ethernet and get into a conversation with it. You never know where that will lead. Anything you want to add to that, Adrian?
No, the bots are just awesome. So talk to
They're
them,
so
have
fun.
fun. And I think things you can think about is, one, you can engage with the bots that already exist. If you're coming over as a brand, though, there's also opportunity to create your own bot that
Yeah,
is brand aligned. So that can actually do something, or if you're developing community on Farcaster, you can kind of create bots that can talk to your community and they never need to sleep.
exactly. Yeah. So
Unlike
they're
the
good.
interns.
They're good for all time zones,
Mhm.
like the interns. The interns do need to sleep. And now we're kind of getting into some practical advice. So this is sort of as we wrap this up, create your first 100 casts. So advice to you is just, just start casting. Find different ways, experiment. Don't try to be perfect, just do it. And Adrian, can you talk about some of these different types of suggestions that you have here for the first 100 casts?
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, just start casting. Don't worry about
Yeah.
engagement. Don't worry about if people are liking. Don't worry about if you're being smart, funny, clever. Just you need to just get that flywheel going of getting used to casting. All of us who have been in Farcaster, especially those of us who have been around for a long time that have now grown big audiences and have followings and get a lot of engagement, we didn't in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't over index on, like, just don't overthink. And kind of, it's a volume game. So then it's like, okay, well, you're ready to cast. What do you do? And one, you don't have to cast that different than you would what you're posting on other social networks. So post what you think is interesting. Talk about, if you're coming in as a brand, you can talk about what your company is and what you're doing. But in terms of like the Farcaster specific advice, here are some suggestions you can do. There is a channel called Uli. It's OULI posting, and it is a channel where you can cast anything you want as long as you don't use the letter E. It's just a word game. It's a constraint. And people just have fun in there. So that's like one easy place to do. You cast something, you can't use the letter E, but a bunch of Farcaster OGs and influential people like to hang out there. So it's a nice place to meet fellow word nerds. Memes is always a good place to go. Farcaster, like any other crypto place, is like very internet culture. So we love our memes.
We love the memes.
We love
There
the
is a
memes.
meme. I think there's actually multiple meme cast actions or composer actions. So you can start there as well, and it will help you create memes for the memes channel.
Then there's Reply Guys, and Reply Guys is just, I think, a concept on the internet, but there is a channel in Farcaster as well, and a whole community of people that identify as Reply Guy. It's a good channel to post in, but I think it's also just like embody the Reply Guy mentality, which is don't worry about casting original content, just reply to other people.
Yep. And then we have Yoink. What is Yoink,
And
Adrian?
And then we have Yoink. Yoink is a Farcaster game. It's a little bit like a capture the flag. It's where you can go to the Yoink channel, find the little frame, and yoink the flag. And then you need to cast about it. And if you talk about yoinking, it's just a Farcaster inside joke. So it's kind of like we're giving you a little fast track to getting in on some of the inside jokes. So have fun yoinking.
Have fun yoinking. And with that, we're going to wrap up this module. And our next module is going to cover channels and community, the next two modules. So we'll be back with our last two modules, and we'll cover all the rest of the things. And anything else that I may have missed regarding content? Did we cover everything?
I think we covered it all.
All right.
And I think by now we've equipped people with a lot of information about Farcaster. And by now people should have their accounts and be casting and making frames. So hope you guys are all having fun with it. And we have our office hours, so definitely come by, ask questions. And if you miss office hours, then tag us in casts and DM us, and we're always happy to help.
Absolutely. And with that, everyone, we will see you on the timeline or in our next two modules. And with that, bye-bye.